This has been a turning point for Lebanon. The country was already suffering from a currency freefall, unemployment, political corruption, proxy interventionism, austerity, sectarianism, and popular protests since October last year. We've all seen the shocking images of the blast, the mushroom cloud, the devastation, the tragic human stories behind it all. But in today's episode, we're going to take a look at Beirut and how this city and its people have been defined by resilience. The great Lebanese writer Khalil Gibran said, "Out of suffering have emerged the strongest souls. The most massive characters are seared with scars." And let's not forget that the Lebanese are those who survived and rebuilt after 1948, after 1958, after a civil war from 1975 to 1990, after the Syrian occupation of Lebanon from 1975 to 2005, after the war against Israel in the south from 1985 to 2000, after the 2006 invasion by Israel, and the neighboring civil war in Syria from 2011 until now. So just a reminder to all those who may have reduced the country to unity governments, tabbouleh, beaches and nightclubs in Hamra, that Beirut la tamut. Beirut will not die because its people have revived it many a time.
And that's what we have to put the focus on now. The idea that it's time to put the power back to the people. The people have said, we don't want this government. We don't want this system. We don't want this political system. It's time for the likes of Iran, time for the likes of Washington, the likes of Saudi Arabia and Riyadh, the likes of Israel, to set aside some of their differences with regards to Lebanon and go back to playing within a boundary that does not result in the deaths of 300, 400, 500 people.
Look, what Semi is saying here is not blaming these foreign countries for what happened, but highlighting how the current Lebanese political system that is in place institutionalized massive incompetence to the point where a government would leave 2,750 tons of explosive ammonium nitrate at a port. And the Lebanese people taking to the streets are demanding a country not defined by sectarianism, militias and foreign powers, but for a new generation of leaders not defined by the country's troubled past. Now, here's a list of Lebanon's antiquated Legion of Doom. You have 82-year-old Nabih Berri and 67-year-old Samir Ja'ja, both in power since the Phoenicians were about. On a serious note, Mr. Berri has been in his position as Speaker of Parliament since 1992 and is part of a Shia political party, while Ja'ja has been the executive chairman of the Lebanese forces since 1986 as part of a Christian political party. MashaAllah, to put that in perspective, I'm 29 years old. So if I was Lebanese, these guys would be like my parents. I was born, raised and grew up under them without an option to change them. In the Lebanese scenario, of course, it is the complex constitution of the country that allows these guys to be in power for so long. Then you have Walid Jumblat, the leader of the most powerful Druze sect, and has been head of the Progressive Socialist Party since 1977. Yes, for 43 years. Of course, the 71-year-old does remind us that we can go back to the future. Then we have Hariri, not the old one, God bless his soul, the young, softer one, representing the Sunni community. He's the former prime minister and a billionaire who himself has tried to help the Lebanese economy countless times by gifting a South African model $60 million and not paying his Mustaqbal newspaper employees for years. We also had the pleasure of seeing him resign while he was kidnapped by his Saudi patrons and sent on a cruise around Egypt and France as if he were a member of the Colombian cartel who pissed off his boss on a reality TV show. Last but not least, we have the guy at the helm. Don't know for how long, he may have resigned by the time this episode is out. Mr. Michel Aoun, representing the Maronite Christian community. Standing not so strong at 85 years of age, in the 1980s, he fled Lebanon in his pajamas to France after he said that he would be the last one to remain. Then came back in 2005 to be a leader. What a guy! Fast forward to 2020, it turns out the man received a private letter from security officials warning him of the risk posed by the vast quantity of ammonium nitrate stored in Beirut's port. On July 20th, yes, 2 weeks before the explosion. But he chose to ignore it. Look, the point here isn't to call out these old men for being eccentric or silly. The point is to highlight that all these guys are to be held to account. They are outdated and they have all failed, which is why the Lebanese people are sick and tired of this power sharing system which grants these guys legitimacy. Oh, and let's not forget Hezbollah, whose weapons and men have destroyed Syria and Lebanon. Subhi Tufaili, the former Secretary General of Hezbollah, says it best when speaking out against his former organization's actions in the wider region.
هذه ليست مقاومة. بعد 2000 ليست مقاومة. هذا السلاح يخدم العدو الصهيوني. هذا السلاح حارس للعدو الصهيوني. هذا السلاح دمر سوريا. هذا السلاح دمر العراق. هذا السلاح دمر اليمن. هذا السلاح دمر لبنان. هذا السلاح فجر بيروت.
As for the foreign players, we can make this quick. To the Macron lovers, let's not forget about what France has done to Lebanon, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, Mali and Chad in order to help. Not exactly a friend to the region. French aid in Lebanon comes with tear gas canisters, and Lebanon's youth don't need lectures on the love of freedom. Their voices have been made loud and clear for the better part of a year now. As for Saudi Arabia and Iran, take your Cold War elsewhere. Too much blood has been spilled for shit. How long will the Lebanese people be a proxy, and should they not be able to choose their own destiny? And last but not least, to the Israeli Likud party member that celebrated the disaster, once more, as Khalil Gibran said, to belittle is to belittle. The Lebanese people will not be belittled or silenced that easily. Beirut la tamut, Beirut will never die.